Division of Humanistic Psychology. She's the Associated Distinguished Professor of Psychology at the California Institute of Integral Studies and has taught at universities like Saybrook University, Lesley, UCLA, the New York Gestalt Institute, and the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich. And I am so happy and we're glad that we could have her here today to kick off the conference for us. So a warm welcome to you, Eileen, and over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Preeti and others. I want to say good evening here, but I understand it's good morning there. I'm in California and I've already lost track of our time difference. So forgive me if I get sleepy while you're just waking up. So here I am in San Francisco, and I want to thank Preeti for her invitation. It's so gracious. You've been so accommodating, so flexible, and so patient with me and others who have organized the conference. I know how much work goes into organizing a conference, so I really appreciate it. And I also want to say that I so support your work. I'll say a little bit about dance therapy, my background, but we're all sisters and brothers across the globe with the healing power of movement and the arts. And how much in today's world we so desperately need such healing power, and how much none of us can do it alone. So I'll share with you what I have been doing. I really encourage you to take from it what you can, what makes sense to you, apply it in your own ways if it's helpful, and hopefully we'll have some dialogue about it at the end of this workshop. See what might be useful to you. Just a quick personal introduction, which is that I am an official dance therapist and a psychologist. So dance therapy in the United States is relatively new. The association is not, you've heard from other dance therapists. So it comes after art, music. It's one of the newer ones. And I was in the first class at Hunter College in 1970. So I go way back, and I've had the privilege, and I would like to bring the work of some really outstanding pioneers and early teachers that really inform my work, and I'm very happy to be able to share with others that work. My belief is, I have a couple of beliefs that I'll bring to you. One is my own. I think many of us, that I want to say, have fortunately, unfortunately, struggled alone with this strange, probably, inclination we feel to move, to create, and not being understood by others. And certainly when I went into the field of psychology, it's very cerebral. And I find myself straddling both those worlds, counselor and dance. And the dance world, I'm attracted to the theories and the new work in trauma and neuropsychology. In the psychology world, I try to bring embodiment and the arts. It's sometimes lonely, and many of us are in that position. So as far as I'm concerned, building bridges is the only way to go. And finally, with COVID and the way the world is looking in these days, we so need to reach out hands to each other and build whatever we can. So that, again, I think, Preeti, you have my information. If I can, I'm happy to respond. And there are some resources at the end of a little PowerPoint. So hopefully this is more of a beginning than an ending, and an introduction to the way I've found a way to make sense of both dance and psychology, national and international, as you find your own way in India, to forge your own identity that's both your own and yet connects with others around the world. Let's see if there's anything else. I wanted to invite you. I'd like to start with lighting a candle. I'll light mine here. If you happen to have a candle by, it's a nice way to bring in, as we do here. I would like to bring in, my background is blurred, so if I get lost, I'll come right back. to bring in our colleagues, our friends, our family. We stand on the shoulders of our teachers, our mentors. We stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, others who share visions. We can't do it without them. So we do from, in this direction, we go from the east to bring in all kinds of inspiration, new ideas. We go from the north to bring in the strength and the courage to help us in our work. We go from the west to bring in the maturity and the setting sun and the development to inform us with its wisdom. And we go with the south to connect us back to tradition and to our own culture, which is so lost these days. And with that, we can create a blessing, which hopefully we'll continue to do throughout this workshop, all of us together, and all of us are not here presently on Zoom. Let's just take a moment, if you would like, to just think about who's not here, who would like to invite in to this circle. Now, if all goes well with technology, I'm going to try to share my screen and just do a little PowerPoint as an introduction. Can you see it? Perfect. So far, so good. All right. So here we all are. That's interesting. It's not moving. Let me. I'm going to do that again. Excuse me, it's not moving. Okay. So I think the first question is the word resilience. I think that's part of the theme of your conference. What's important about it? And let's spend a little time just discussing resilience. It's kind of officially defined, and please forgive me for speaking English. I understand you can speak English, everyone, but if I can't speak your languages, I hope this is okay. The ability to bounce back from adversity. When we think about that, we'll talk a little bit more. Some call it the difference between being a victim and a survivor. Some say survivor's not enough. It's got to be one who thrives. Say a little bit more about that. The questions that come up is, what is resilience? What qualities create resilience? And of course, if we begin to uncover those qualities, can they be taught or cultivated? And again, in some of the examples I'll first share with you, that's so needed around the globe. Can we help? Practically all of my experiences with resilience or my knowledge of resilience are from psychology, and they're almost all cerebral in the head. It has to do with reframing situation, thought changes and whatnot. The obvious question comes up, what does resilience have to do with the body? And with dance movement therapy, is there a place for us in helping work with resilience? Before I get to this, I should have put a slide in here, which is my strong belief in the body, and I'm going to call it an interconnected track, because I think that the cognitive role in resilience is very important, to be able to see opportunities, to be able to understand things differently, not at all to be dismissed. My own personal feeling coming out of dance therapy is unless a concept is rooted in experience, it's just words. And that often the way we teach, the way we do workshops, the way we do our therapy is first the experience, and then you can say, oh, that's resilience. Now I get it. Now I have a reference. Now I can repeat it. Now I can share it. And then you can work from a body and a conceptual point of view to get your arms around this thing called resilience. And that we absolutely need both. Some have, say, different kinds of resilience. I'm going to recommend here, first of all, the work of Ed Diener. These are researchers that I know in the United States, who's differentiated what he calls hedonia, Greek word meaning pleasure, from eudaimonia, which is pleasure plus meaning. Very important. Here's where I bring in my background as an existential psychologist. We need meaning in our lives. It's not just enough to get back to where, as they call it, pre-morbid condition. Many psychologists talked about resilience as helping people get back to where they were before trauma hit. Many of us know that there's opportunity. We talk about post-traumatic growth that can come out of adversity. These may be spiritual dimensions. We talk about the meaning in your illness. Let's say I used to work with breast cancer survivors. Maybe you're still going to die, but what is the meaning of the illness? How does it enrich your life so that you die very differently than you did before? These are very significant, the role of meaning. The arts can cultivate both as a key here. There's a key term in resilience studies now and in the training of resilience called affect chronology. So that resilience is the ability to recover after adversity, not just recover, to recover quickly after adversity, to get back on your feet quickly. What I'm signaling is the importance of time. Again, a movement dimension. And being fast on your feet. Something else we can help with. I'll talk about time, weight, space, and flow. By the way, as a dance therapist, I was trained in what we call the classic model of dance therapy back in 1970 at Hunter College. It was Laban based. So those of you who know Laban notation, we work with time, weight, space, and flow for dimensions of human existence that we can map out, teach, and track in movement. So time is extremely important when we're talking about resilience, both in terms of how to observe and how to cultivate. They're now discovering different parts of the brain have to do with different aspects of resilience. It's not a single concept. Again, the role of neurophysiology tends to look for, we now know the mind is not just in the brain, the mind is all over the body. But they tend not to bring embodiment into their research labs. But this tells us again that it can be cultivated. One research lab, I just heard a lecture by Richard Davidson, is one who's worked with the Dalai Lama, mostly investigating states of meditation. He's now looking at resilience, as well as compassion and other states of mind. How can they be taught and trained? He doesn't do movement. It's all verbal. However, Center for Investigating Healthy Minds, it's still all in the mind, as most psychologists would say. You understand my bias here very clearly. It's not just in the mind. I think it's stuck again. Let me go back and redo it. Let's see if it works now. Okay. I'm just going to, fairly briefly, this will be mostly experiential. After a little introduction, we'll just go into the structure of the morning for you, the evening for me. I happened to be living in San Francisco in 1989 when the earthquake came. So that was my first real experience of natural disaster. We talk about natural versus man-made disasters, and we were seeing more and more of them. When the earthquake hit, some of the work that I did briefly, I lived in a part of San Francisco that was built on rock and very stable. My apartment house was on rock, but my office was on what they call landfill, so that it was vulnerable and a lot of the offices fell in. There were a lot of elderly people living there who had to be in a shelter, who were told you have 15 minutes to go out to your home, collect everything from 80 years of your life there, and then your home is what's the word, condemned. They have to tear it down. You can't ever go back in again. And so we saw those elderly people in states of fear and panic and anxiety, out of communication with their families. These are a little bit cliche, but they're very helpful phrases from deconstruction to reconstruction. There was a talk here by the Dalai Lama just before that, and this is something that I used to talk about, that we can't go back to the way things were. Life is unstable. Life keeps moving. We have to move with it. And this whole illusion of control is really an illusion. And when the children are asking their parents, I thought you could protect us from everything, the parents are going to have to say, yes, I do my best. But we can't guarantee it all the time. We have to be prepared how to create buffers. Help children, I believe, learn to deal with resiliency before disaster hits. This is a new normal for all of us now. I work with death and rebirth. My orientation is basically existential humanistic, so that we really work with metaphors of confrontation with death. It's in every moment. It's in every disaster. It was not part of I was working with the Red Cross in San Francisco. They just talk about restoring control. They don't talk about what it's like to face death or destruction or loss, and the rebirth that can come out of this. Humanistic psychologists, and I believe all arts therapists, tend to work with creativity more than most psychologists, and communication and connection, which is a great advantage we have. Whoops. Sorry, it's stuck again. I have no idea why. Let's go back. Okay. We humanistic existential psychologists tend to work from what we call a strength-based approach. That is really emphasizing what people can cope with, what strengths they have. We don't minimize tragedy. We don't minimize pain and suffering, but we try not to get stuck there, and really help people identify their own strengths and communal strengths to build back together. And this is this concept called post-traumatic growth, which is relatively new. Again, I think it's been endemic to the arts and to humanistic psychology for a long time. Again, it doesn't mean to be going back to normal. It means using adversity to learn and grow from. And this is a reference to when I documented the stories of the elderly caught in the earthquake. A student of mine transcribed them and wrote his doctoral dissertation on them. And here's an article about them. And you have copies of the slides and all the references on there if you want to check. It's called A Humanistic Approach to the Psychology of Trauma. Aha. The second example comes from the work that I did in Israel. I went there starting teaching every year there, and I used to think that trauma was something that happened to only soldiers or other people, that was not about my relatively privileged life. In Israel, I learned that it happens to everyone, and we're all vulnerable to it. I'm going to share with you an exercise that I did with a class there, which is sort of, I call it arts-based research, where we worked with the theme of resilience. Out of the improvisation with the body, we then documented words and concepts and images that came out of that. We clustered all of these into 4 main themes. And this grew directly from, these are the themes we're going to work with today in movement. These themes came directly from their experience of what does the word trauma mean to them and how do they experience it and cultivate it in their own bodies. The first set of themes had to do with existential themes, like death and rebirth, down and up, lard and dark, and transitions between the floor and getting up, for example. Themes around time. So has a lot of themes around rhythm, rest and renewal, recuperation, recovery, repetition, breath, and heartbeat are all time-oriented themes, also in the body. Space themes are in and out, big and small, opening and closing, entering and exiting, yes, no, here, there, boundaries, in and out, personal space. Space themes. The fourth, these are of course related to Laban themes, have to do with weight, heavy, light, jumping, springing, bouncing, mobilizing. And just to say my own reflections on these, I used to, a long time ago, jog and run. And I discovered that even when I was in a depressive state, the feeling of bouncing and springing up from the earth would let my thoughts start bouncing and my emotions start bouncing. Again, I started to reflect on the relationship between the thoughts, the emotions, and the physical body, and how they can inform each other. So here are some references. I'll just go over them quickly. These are all recommended. An early one, 2006, on expressive and creative arts. A second one, Charles Figley, who writes a lot about, and this is something else we're all focusing on now, it's not just us who are traumatized, the caregivers and secondary burnout have to be helped as well. Maybe more important because they're the ones, and certainly first line responders, people who deal with COVID, need help, very much so. And he's the one who's written most about it. This one was written by a student of mine from Istanbul when their earthquake hit, and how the earthquake confronted them with these existential themes of death and rebirth as a group. One of my favorites, and I consider myself in his tradition, Rollo May, who's an existential depth, kind of a Jungian psychologist, may be familiar to all of you, wrote a beautiful book a long time ago called The Courage to Create. So that it takes courage to create. And that was part of my understanding in the earthquake in San Francisco, what makes the difference between a victim and a person who thrives. Some of the people who volunteered to help with the survivors of the earthquake, one was a nurse who had retired. She was in her bathtub as the earthquake hit and her ceiling fell in around her. How did she cope? She put on her clothes, she went back to her hospital, and she started volunteering. And I also interviewed the volunteers. What makes you volunteer at a time like that? Why not be a victim? And we know now that altruism and volunteering is one of the things that at the right point in the healing process helps people heal and find their own resilience. This one was written about responding to natural and man-made disasters with the dance movement and the therapy. These are some journals you may not know about. Journal of Applied Arts and Health. This one is a new book that I co-edited called Integrated Care for the Traumatized, where we have people writing. Again, this is relatively new. We have drama therapists, art therapists, dance therapists from different countries writing about how they use the arts to deal with trauma. And the last one is kind of a classic by now, although it's new. Van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma. Very useful for the physiology and the neuropsychology of what happens when you're in a state of trauma, of dysregulation, and how the brain, the mind, and the body help you re-regulate after trauma. We have a lot to cover tonight, but I think I'll pause right here, come back, just catch my breath and others, and just see if there's any comments, questions before we move on. If none, shall we move on?
Ma'am,
Yeah. Oh, we have one. Yes?
ma'am, good morning. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Ma'am, you said resilience is ability to bounce back from adversity. So can
Yes.
I say it as rehabilitation?
I'm looking. I just put it on gallery view so I can see who's speaking. Will you wave? Perfect. Rama?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so can we say resilience as rehabilitation? Can we refer this term to rehabilitate?
The ability to rehabilitate, but I missed a word earlier. You have what? And can you ask, what is the question or
Ma'am, you
comment?
said resilience. Yeah, resilience is ability to bounce back from adversity.
Yes.
So, is it like rehabilitation, getting back to the healthy situation? If the person is suffering, having some depression issue or stress, so are we rehabilitating him without knowing through dance therapy?
Well, yes, and if I can say that, we're rehabilitating him to where he was before, hopefully. But what I'm saying is we can get him further. He
Okay,
can
ma'am.
learn from what he went through, especially if it's not just physical. He didn't break a leg, but there was an earthquake, a war, something. And he really comes back stronger, with more wisdom. And we can do that with the arts. It's my belief.
Okay, ma'am.
Sure.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any others?
Hi.
May I?
If I can, if you don't mind, how do you pronounce your name?
Me, Suprita.
Oh, who's speaking? I thought it was Sauni or.
Oh, Sauni. Okay, you can go with Sauni first. I'll go next.
No,
No,
Suprita, please
Subrita,
go
it's
ahead.
fine.
Please go ahead. I'll ask you.
Okay,
Suprita.
so hello, I'm Suprita. I'm doing my bachelor's in psychology. So I had like a small doubt. So when you said conquering death, and with that, we try and rebirth. I mean, we try and get them to reborn from into another, I mean, like a new person. So
Yes.
through dance, how can we do that? Like, I am a bit like confused because I'm scared of death. So how do we conquer that through dance? So I just wanted to know.
So, Suprita, thank you for the question. Hopefully, in the workshop, we'll have a chance to, I call it play with these kind of exercises and movement and discover our own answers. One way, I'll describe a very quick experience I had. I was in one of my teachers, Irmgard Bartenieff, came from Germany after the war to the United States. After World War II, a lot of death. And one of the exercises in her workshop, she was one of the first to bring this, it was 1976. The instructions were fairly simple. Roll down to the floor and come back up. We're going to do that. So many of us just go down to the floor. It's kind of a death, like a giving up. But we learn in dance, we learn in martial arts to keep what we call active weight. So you turns into a roll where you can find your way back up. And it's very important in martial arts. If you hit the floor and diving like this, you'll break a bone. But if you know how to fall and you're not afraid of falling, you'll survive much better. The fear of falling is equivalent to the fear of death. And again, why it has to be felt in the body. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good morning, ma'am. This is Shawnee.
Shani?
Shawnee.
Shami?
Shawnee.
Shami? Thank you.
It's okay. It's okay. Ma'am, so I practice art therapy here, and I'm a psychologist too. In my work, I try to do work with resilience. The way you were expressing your approach towards therapy, I do relate to that partly. And I was, one question I have always been wondering in work, if you can reflect some, that, this line between surviving and thriving, what we psychologists try to, put a mark, okay, this is resilience. Now you're doing more than just living.
Yes.
But this idea is so very subjective and so very cultural. At times I feel at loss. Do I go with my participants' subjectivity, what they are bringing, what they are telling me, or if I'm having it's a feeling that there can be more, or how to bridge that, how to bring about that, or is it only the therapist's own self working? These are very tricky lines that at times I find a bit enmeshed together. And
that's a wonderful question.
How do I check? How do I see for that for myself?
If I may share a very personal experience and then share it with the group. I was just recently diagnosed with a serious illness. It's very awkward for your friends to know what to say. Sometimes they say things like, you'll be fine. You'll come out, you'll be well, That's thriving, but it's too soon. That's not my experience at the moment. First comes what we call merging with the person, being with the person, which is, oh, that feels terrible. Oh, I'm really sorry for the loss. Only once do they feel, as we say in psychology, heard, understood, felt, are they willing to let go of the grieving and then move past it to the next stage. So that's why I think timing is important. And the second answer I would give you is that it's a question also of identity. When some people say I'm a breast cancer survivor, to some it means I'm stuck in that identity for the rest of my life, and I don't get back to sort of normal life. So the word thriver helps to offset that. So I'm not stuck. I'm seeing a future growth, future activities, unknown life, more opportunities. So it's to help with both. Move on with the future and not get stuck, but also not get stuck in the future and not spend time grieving the loss and moving through the various stages until the thriving happens. And finally, I was just about to use the same word, It's all subjective. There is no, I don't believe, there is no set of categories that you move through, but both are really necessary.
I really hope to learn from you today. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Maybe we'll take one more, we'll do some experience, and then hopefully the experience will help answer the questions, as well as I'm sure we'll raise more questions. Yes, is that Damini?
Yes, hi. I am studying psychology from the psychoanalytic, psychodynamic point of view. And over
Uh,
there, the body is, part of everything is the self is embodied. Um, it's also, it's a theoretical, conceptual thing, and I haven't practiced it yet. And I wonder that I see a lot of convergence and, just ways that creative and movement uh, therapies and psychoanalysis or psychodynamic understanding of the self have in common or could inform each other. And I wonder whether you have used any of that understanding in your practice.
I'm showing two video clips in this workshop, and one will be, I'll show you, with we as psychologists were asked to help when COVID was at its worst in India, because we had been working with COVID first in the United States and then with Zoom other places around the world. It was such a privilege, and we worked with a group of Indian psychoanalysts who, in a sense, were more embodied than Americans tend to be. Some of it is cultural, I would think. And the other is time, is that I think psychoanalysis originally was less embodied. It was more about the ego and the id, or somehow in the head. Luckily, I think it's become more embodied as the disciplines begin to inform each other. So I want to say I think that's wonderful news, and I hope that you'll continue to develop your form of psychoanalysis and be open to the arts, to creativity, and in the body, as they should be together. They should not be separate, from my point of view.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So shall we get ready to do? Are you ready to do some movement? Were you prepared to do movement? Yes. Okay. Nothing fancy is needed, just comfortable clothes and a little space to move. So if all goes well, I'm going to go back to the speaker view here. Preeti is going to help me with breakout groups. Preeti, there are 34. Should we still have 4 groups each? Kind of randomly assigned?
So you want 4 people in a group?
Well, just divide it by 4 as more
Okay,
or
so
less evenly.
okay, so totally 4 breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, why don't I, before we actually do the breakouts, sorry, let me just go over the instructions. So each group gets approximately 20 minutes. I'll ring the bell. Are you familiar with improvisation if I give you a theme? To find a way to work together as a group? If not, maybe we'll start today. I've had the experience with people who have not done it before, and they do find a way. The theme is the 4 themes, the 4 breakout groups correspond to the 4 themes. And during this workshop, each of the breakout groups will have a chance to work with one of the 4 themes. So the first theme is the existential theme. And that has to do with however you want to imagine it, death and rebirth. The examples I gave you is sinking down to the floor and finding your way back up, which I think if you just stayed with that, you could find in 20 minutes. What I'd like you to do is do it individually till you find a way to do it, and then find a way as a group to do it, so that everybody might be doing it a little differently, but you make a group kind of composition from it. And then, within the 20 minutes, you document it. You would write a series of words, like I told you, in, out, up, down, that emerge from this experience. You ask yourself, what did I learn from it? Or you may decide to draw some images, so that you'll have a little presentation at the end of 20 minutes. The experience and documenting it with some words or some images together as a group. Sound okay? I'm going to play, well, let me go
Excuse me,
over the
ma'am.
other groups.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Good morning. I'm very new to dance therapy. Is that okay? Like, I'll be okay in the group, and I'm not really sure about it.
Everybody's okay in the group. When in doubt, let's say for this one, just go down and up.
Yeah.
And in that way, you'll find your own way. Some people in martial arts, you're taught like a way to roll so that you can find your way back up. You use the support of the floor to get up. You're creative about how you go down and you get back up. The discovery process is what's important. How do you get yourself back up when you fall down, basically?
Yeah.
How do you do it alone? Ultimately, we discover we need each other. You can help each other get up. You know those children's games where you hold hands and everybody gets up together?
Yeah.
That's all up to you. Be creative and
Thank
find
you.
your own way. Sure. Let me just make sure I've got the other ones here. Okay. The next one is time. And that may have to do with rhythm, fast, slow, and that has to do with fast recovery versus maybe too slow, like the train left the station and I was too slow. Or heartbeat. In some cultures they use a drum for restoring courage, and the drum represents the heartbeat. Other cultures do a lot with breath. In and out, in and out, in and out. Some have to do with repetition, like I can only move this much of my arm when I was hurt, but by repeating, I eventually get my whole body involved. So repetition becomes a way to go from a little bit to a lot, from weak to strong, in other words, is the trajectory you want to make. Space themes. That may have to do with in and out, let's say boundaries. We see this a lot with children who have been abused. Don't come closer. Now you come closer. Now I can control the boundary. This is my personal space. I'm safe here. We saw that a lot in COVID when a whole family in China was living in one room. And you had to sort of create privacy, like I'm pretending I'm in my small room here, so I have a little privacy even though you're very close to me. You create a sense of safety with space and boundaries. If your space has been invaded in an abusive situation, how do you create boundaries? And in that one, working with others, what I typically do is you create your own personal safety, and then you can begin to reach out to others when you feel safe. Maybe you want to end up together as a group. Maybe you still don't feel safe. But again, it's how do you find safety through space. The last one is weight. And I would suggest just jumping, springing, finding that ability to bounce. So group number 1, for now, works with existential themes. And I'm going to suggest just down and up and death and rebirth. I gave some examples of it. Find your way alone, find your way together, and together, hopefully in a group, and document words or images. Group number 2, work with time, rhythm, heartbeat, breath, getting the life force going again. Oh, we thought this person had died, but no, we have a heartbeat. And now the heartbeat's getting stronger. Life comes back. Time. Third group, space. Boundaries. Come close, don't come close. I'm safe, I'm not safe. Boundaries. Fourth group, weight. Bouncing, jumping, finding your spring back. Is that clear enough? Each of the 4 groups, and Brita, you'll let everybody know if they're the first, second, third, fourth. Remember, everybody's going to get a chance to work with each of the 4 themes over the workshop. I will time this, and I'll keep my eye. We should have 8, I think 15 minutes might be enough. Let's start a little shorter, make sure we have time. 15 minutes, it's going to seem long. Time for improvisation, and then document as a group what you have, because we're going to share all of these at the end. Okay? So Preeti, you want to do the breakout groups?
Yes,
I'm
I'm ready.
A little music.
I don't think they will be able to hear the music in the breakout rooms, though.
Ah, I'll try. If they don't, you're very likely right about that.
Yes.
We can use our own music, right? We can
Oh,
share
good.
our own.
Use an option. We often say, one person just on your phone, whatever it is. If you want slow music to go down and up, if you're bouncing, you want faster music anyway, probably. Or no music is fine too. Great. Drumming, you can use your body to drum.
So shall I open the rooms?
Let's do that, and I'll ring the bell to actually
Okay.
we'll start the timing going.
Charmaine and Somushri, are you here?
Yes. Hi.
Did you get the notification to join a room?
No, I didn't actually.
Okay, I think I'll assign you to a different room.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, you would have got it now. Yeah.
I see some no's, I see some yes. Yes? Okay, let's go. So, again, group number 1. Can you stand so we can see who you are? Come on, you can do it.
I'll try and spotlight all the group 1 members, but it'll give me some time. I'm just doing it.
Amazing. You can do that so that everybody can still see, huh?
Samya has agreed to present on our behalf, so actually maybe just spotlight her.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Soumya. We all had different mixed emotions actually when we did the movement. Some of us remembered the struggles we had in our own life, the ups and downs, what we faced. Some of us felt falling down and rising up needs a lot of power, willpower from our own mind, even though we have all the support system around us. So the struggles, whatever we encounter when we come up, so many of us felt all those roller coaster of emotions. And I personally felt helping others was so fulfilling. So that is my own personal thing. Coming up, yes, we really need our own willpower plus support of others. So as a life's purpose, we can help others and do the maximum in this circle of life, death, and those who believe in rebirth, like life, death, rebirth. So what happens in between matters the most. That is the purpose for which we have all come into the earth. So finally, a realization came. Okay, we should be ready to do something in this lifetime, in this God-given time which is given to us. And we have noted down the keywords. This is from each one's words which popped up in their mind. We have taken the two prominent words. So struggle, rebuild, roller coaster, growth, effort, vulnerable, bounce back, relief, willpower, compassion, destruction and healing, isolation, identity, individuality, and conformity. These were the words which came out from us after the movement experience. So that's all from me. Anybody want to add on, you can add on from the group members.
Just beautiful. Just beautiful. Thank you. And profound as well. Thank you so much. Shall we do group number 2?
So we have two parts to it. One, we're going to show y'all what we did. We have individual movements as well as one aspect we wanted to do together. So I'm going to play the music if that's okay. Ellen, is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So I will share the music. Just a second. Just let me know if you all can hear it. So I'll play from the beginning, then we can start.
Lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. How was it to do it?
Yeah, so I will share a screen. So actually, I didn't tell my group mates about it. So when we were talking about it, we had some words. So I was just thinking if I can draw it out. I will also speak what I want to, like what we discussed. But I'd also like to show what I drew. So if that's okay with my teammates, if that's okay. Yes, okay. Can you all see?
Wow.
Okay, so basically we spoke about the 3 speeds, slow, medium, and fast. And for each of us, it was very different. So starting off with one of our group mates, she said that for her, the slow speed meant reaching out, while the medium meant grabbing, and the fast was gathering and giving. So that's what she was interpreting when she was doing her movement. Then another person spoke about how it was equal to wings. So she was like trying to explore with freedom and her acquaintance with her body, with her movement. Another person spoke about rhythm and how the music, she related with the music and how small changes were put in as she developed the movement. And another person spoke about repetition and how because of the repetition she's able to be more conscious about what she's doing, and that too only in the slow speed she's able to feel more conscious about what she's doing. And one more thing we spoke about was sustenance in each speed. So she was going from slow to fast, but when we first tried it out, she said that she was not able to sustain each speed, but she wanted to try to sustain each speed. And I said that I was more aware of what I was doing in the slow speed compared to the fast speed. So if you see the wings are what we spoke about the freedom, and then inside the things are actually the small changes which so from the beginning we go into small changes. And then the hand represents more like a reaching out or grabbing or gathering, things like that. And then the waves I thought was like a repetition, and then this was like sustenance and being more aware, something like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, does that capture it for everyone in that group? So beautiful, just lyrical, lovely. And I really liked the contrast, fast, medium, slow. Each one is different. Thank you so much. Shall we go on to the next? Group number 3.
Hi, we're in group 3. I think Mohita, would you like to speak about it? We'll make you our representative.
Hi, thank you so much, Ritu. Is everyone spotlighted? Okay, we are getting spotlighted. So, hi, Eileen and everyone. Thank you so much for this beautiful movement capsules that we are going through. And our theme was space, and we explored it in different ways. And we'd like to share with you through movement itself, and let the movement speak. So, I think we're waiting for a few of us more. Yeah. All right. Shubha, would you please lead us? Thank you.
Radha.
Yeah.
Rajot.
Damini.
Amira.
Rama. Mohita ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Just lovely. Just lovely. You work together as a team really beautifully. And we have the fourth group.
Raise your hands, please. I would know. Yeah.
Hmm.
Jyotsna, you'll have to be on video, otherwise I can't spotlight you.
Preeti, I'm not able to, so I think you can go ahead and spotlight the others.
I
For
know
some
I'm
reason, I'm not
missing
able to
the
switch.
others. Yes.
Tell me when to start. Ready?
We started with movements. All of us had our individual movements, and we repeated that twice for all of us. And then we looked at words which we felt when the movement was happening. So all of us collected words, we got it all together, and we kind of made meaning of it into a poem. So can anyone read out the poem for us? Yeah.
Now, can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, sorry for
Great.
that. I think I'm having internet issues. So we can read this out. We call it the pendulum of life by all of us. Running away from childhood, I felt that I was in the eye of the storm. In the eye of the storm, I swirl, I circle, I have no control. Coming out of the box, I found myself in another place. The wandering soul jumped in celebration. La 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 la, carefully. Lighting circles and protecting waves makes the child trot in gay. After spinning around and letting go, I found my balance again. Rhythm gave a sense of letting go, like the ray of sunshine caressing us as we move on. March on, walk on with the rhythm.
That's
And
us.
you told me you couldn't do this. We'll take a break in a minute, but I think it just deserves some comments and appreciation for the creativity that comes. And this is just the beginning of what's possible with group improvisation, with movement, evoking words, images, coming from the unconscious, from the conscious. It just flows this way. Preeti, what did you think?
Oh, I have goosebumps right now. And right now I'm feeling I wish I was part of the entire process. And I really feel like I missed out, though I was able to do a bit of movement when I joined one of the groups. But I think it's beautiful what has emerged, because when they went into the rooms, I was like, oh, will they be able to do it? Because there were so many doubts, and what has come out, what has emerged is really beautiful and heart touching.
Yes. 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 Thank you for creating this, Preeti. We're just at the beginning. Any other comments? And then we will have a well-deserved break, yes? Radha?
Yeah, when I heard the poem, I could see all the movements which were ingrained in those lines and the meaning. So I could see like like a written version of dance movement therapy. So that came across to me like that. So just wanted to share this with you, all of you. Thank you. Thank you for such a lovely experience.
Just sharing what I experienced in my group. How do I hold my own while also be part of the group? That was an interesting process for me. Because we had limited time. If we had more time, I could have done both. And I felt I was just being with myself, and then I was also being part of the group. So that was an interesting process for me.
When I went inside the group, I'm sorry, am I interrupting anybody? Yeah, shall I go? So when I entered inside the group, I had no idea. So, and when Jyotsna asked if we could play the music, I said yes. And, it just, like in the poem, we all made it together. I just went with the rhythm. And I think this was like when we started the poem, it was like everybody's lines were put into it. One came up with the first line and the other, and it just fell into place. Like, you know, how the rhythm made me fall into place with what I was doing. I think the poem just like fell into place, and it was so lovely to see how meaningful it turned out to be. Just words of everyone could make a beautiful poem. Thank you for this, Ellen. I'm so much grateful to you.
I just wanted to share something. Can I share? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to share that it was amazing that I was thinking about resilience. And I've always felt that, you know, you need to have your own resources to deal with any situation in your life. And that's what life is. You're building resources, and that's the process of life. But today, I think the realization was how much group support can help. So, you know, you go in at one low level of, I mean, I'm not judging creativity, but I'm just saying you go in at one level, but you come out 10 times higher than the level of creativity or output that you could ever have. And to me, I think the realization was resilience also is a lot of group support.
Is it okay if I share? I was I'm going through a major transition right now in my life, physical transition. I'm moving, and I just realized how much being in this group, the being witnessed in my movement, the witnessing was so powerful. Going to almost what Vidya is also sharing is that all this time I'm sort of just doing, going, doing whatever I need to do, but being able to have this time and space to really move with it and process it, and that too with a group was extremely powerful for me. And it's just the beginning, and I'm feeling like, oh my God, this has been a need, and I haven't really paid attention to that. I've known I need to do it, but just having this is so special. So thank you to my group, but thank you to everyone.
Can I share? Yeah. Hi, Eileen. Thanks again. So for me, I always get astounded by the power of movement and how, like Ritu just said, you don't even know where this is coming from. You don't know there is a need. But then when you start moving just, you know, in a very abstract way. And then for somehow my own body found its meaning. What was the meaning of space for me? And when I went deeper into that exploration, you know, I really found that I was spreading myself very, very expansively. All my movements were expansive, and in that movement came another smaller movement. And initially, I thought that maybe I'm finding myself in all this expansiveness, but then I found that I was not finding myself in the expansiveness. That was for the world, but this is my space. And I was so happy that they have their space to thrive. But I realized just there that how important it was for me every day to come back to my own space and re-energize myself. So, you know, in this space of being a mother, you know, working and all of that, we often forget to ground ourselves and create that 1 hour for ourselves. So I always get astounded how movement can bring out our deepest and our truest feelings. So thank you so much. I can never get over it. So I've been in this space, as I say to Simtai, I've been in this space for so many years, and it's just so beautiful every time. So thank you so much, everybody. Really, thank you.
Me too.
Can I say something?
Please.
Okay, so when Mohita was talking about the space and how you know, you have your internal space, I felt every time I do my evening exercise routine, but like 45 minutes I'll be just putting music and dancing, and that gives me so much of happiness. And how that movement actually brings back your your internal satisfaction is what I feel. Like I've done this for a long time, like this doing it for 45 minutes. I just do it for, I mean, like I've done it for about a year or something, and it feels so like you have accomplished something. And that even if you are in the saddest, so sometimes you don't feel the right mood, you don't feel like it's the right time, you shouldn't, I don't want to do anything, you just put on music and just move according to it, and then you feel so much better. So seeing how that small movement actually makes so much of difference, um actually makes me feel so happy. Yeah. Thank you.
I want to share something. Is regarding the space, the session I start with is that when I see the screens in Zoom, it's like adding my space to the other. So it's like accumulating space between my space, real space, and the other space. And this is make a connection. Even I'm very far from India now. I'm in Switzerland, so attaching the space together, even with time difference and many other things, but with movement, it's accumulating all together as we are in the same space.
Perfect.
I wanted to share too. Can I go ahead? So I really want to thank Eileen and Preeti for just creating this space. I'm sitting with what Vidya said, and I'm really resonating. About the thing that resilience felt like something that I had to do for myself. And when Vidya said no, when we were sitting in the group, it did feel like, I can do it for myself. I can even offer it to others and also maybe take some for myself. I did that in my smaller group. And even when the others shared, even in the larger group, when we shared, when I was witnessing, there was something that I sort of picked up from almost, it moved me, it touched me. And it's as if I've taken a little bit of everything from all of the other people in this group too. So resilience need not be something that only, I have to do, but probably others can help me too. And that's like a really liberating feeling. Thanks for that.
Uh-huh. See if there's any one or two more before our break.
Yeah, so this image just came to me as I was listening to everyone and to myself also. It's like an egg, and the shell is cracking up and a little chick is coming out. And I'm feeling that for myself, and I'm feeling that for, it's so beautiful, and so grateful that I'm here. Thank you so much.
I was going to say something about how I was a bit shy of keeping my video on at first and in the group. And then Saru, you said it perfectly. Like it was coming out of the shell. I first kept my video off and then I was able to move. And then I put it back on and then I was able to move with everyone. And it was so nice that the movement and the music let me connect with everyone. And by the end, I felt quite connected in the group. And just the whole experience changes when we, and I think, for us, when we feel connected or don't feel connected. And yeah, this just reminded me of that power of movement. Thank you all.
Yes. I guess perhaps it is time for a break. We usually do 15 minutes. Preeti, is that right? We'll come back at 9:25.
Yes, that would be 10:55 here.
Ah.
Yeah, 15 minutes is good.
15 minutes and 15 minutes. We call it a biological break. Okay. See you. I'll be here. Tea. Are we all back? Wonderful. Oof, I want to say a few things and share what I've been thinking about lately. So, obviously, resilience. And obviously, resilience is personal, collective. I wish I could share more with you. As I said, I'd love to come to India, and I did put my email in the chat so that if you want, I'm happy to put you on my email list for future trainings. I lose my voice, forgive me, so I'm drinking water here. My beginnings as a folk dancer started out as a folk dancer. I'm very interested in culture and cultural differences. And for 5 years, when the first Syrian refugees got to Jordan, I went over to Jordan to work with them. And one of the first things that was so heartbreaking was their loss of culture. So in trauma, there's a lot written about loss of life, loss of limb, loss of family, loss of culture is not taken as seriously, but it's deeply traumatic. And as I watch the world be displaced, more and more migrations, with not only political upheaval, but climate change, people are leaving countries, are going to have to start leaving countries and villages. And one of the things, culture has been a way to support whole communities, really, the whole structure of a community. Families are breaking down. Individuals don't have those safety nets anymore. And as many of you may have gone to another country or had, family members who had to relocate to another country, you know how hard it is with resources. You can imagine with few resources and with high degrees of trauma as well. And so I've been very interested in the role that culture plays in restoring a sense of self in culture and resilience. And there's not all that much written about it. And so the umbrella that I'm living under now is cultural loss and trauma, and the role of culture and the arts in trauma, and how it can help. So I have too little, but I'll show you one video clip that I just got that is kind of what I don't want you to do, but you'll appreciate it. And you'll see why. It's someone really overcoming trauma with her own culture. But what she is a very trained dancer. And it might give the impression that you need to be so trained in order to express yourself in movement. And that's not the impression I want to give people. There was some conversation about simplicity, about accessibility. Anybody can reach up and down. And most of my work has been to find really simple movements that reach to the heart of a situation. We call these, I'm going to go on and on, I'll try to stop talking. We call these archetypes in movement, and also have a Jungian background. So some of these things like just giving and receiving. Somebody talked about, I get strength by giving, by helping others. And then some people, especially therapists like many of us, are good at giving, we're not so good at receiving help. So you can see in some of these opposites, you can kind of diagnose the balance, or who's off balance, has too much of one and too much of another. It's not that we want to fix or correct anybody. It's just that these basic polarities are polarities of existence in life. Ermgard used to talk about scattering the seeds, gathering the harvest. Scattering the seeds, and you see these all in folk dances. These basic movements of agriculture, of work, they kept communities together. Communities did it in their own way and developed their own forms. The rhythm in the United States, people, we call it barn raising, built structures on the farms, and everybody would do it together, and all the women would make bread together or sew together, and they didn't need words and they didn't need psychoanalysis, but the rhythm kept people together. In other words, they didn't have to tell the story or use words. It was more about connecting, supporting, and creating a space where people could be free to be themselves while still connected to the group. So that balance of self and group is tremendously important. So that's why I encourage you in your own way, if you use this as you help people, to keep it simple enough that you're not intimidating people, that they have to have special training in order to help themselves. Anybody can do simple movements. But it's not just mechanical exercises, which some physical therapy tends to be not connected to emotions, to the heart. So the ultimate goal is really connecting the heart, the mind, the brain, and the body in a movement that has emotion, that has meaning, that has all of that. So even if you start with something simple, it tends to, as we saw, grow into something meaningful. Like I can just be exercising my arms, and before you know it, it's a communication. So you let the movement grow, and it goes where it needs to. If your ego doesn't get in the way, or your anxieties don't stop it. So I wanted to show you this video, this little 15-minute video clip of what is so inspiring, but it's not what I'm trying to ask you to do. But I still think it'll have beautiful meaning for you. So are you ready? All right, let's try screen sharing again. All right, I have to unscreen share, and now screen share again. Oh, I think I have to pull it up first. Excuse me, let's see. Here it is. Okay, I'm going to stop share. And once more. Here we go. Ready?
The sounds that remind you of your dad.
This is the advertisement, sorry.
ऐगिरि नन्दिनि नन्दित मेदिनि विश्वविनोदिनि नन्दिनुते गिरिवर विन्ध्य शिरोदिनि वासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हेशिति कण्ठ कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते
जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते. This is an ode to the mother goddess that most of us in India learn when we are children. I learned it when I was 4 at my mother's knee. That year, she introduced me to dance, and thus began my tryst with classical dance. Since then, it's been 4 decades now. I've trained with the best in the field, performed across the globe, taught young and old alike, created, collaborated, choreographed, and wove a rich tapestry of artistry, achievement, and awards. The crowning glory was in 2007 when I received this country's 4th highest civilian award, the Padma Shri, for my contribution to art. But nothing prepared me for what I was to hear on the 1st of July, 2008. I heard the word carcinoma. Yes, breast cancer. As I sat numbstruck in my doctor's office, I heard other words: cancer, stage, grade. Until then, cancer was the zodiac sign of my friend. Stage was what I performed on. And grades were what I got in school. That day, I realized I had an unwelcome, uninvited, new life partner. As a dancer, I know the 9 rasas or the navarasas: anger, valor, disgust, humor, and fear. I thought I knew what fear was. That day, I learned what fear was. Overcome with the enormity of it all and the complete feeling of loss of control, I shed copious tears and asked my dear husband, Jayant. I said, is this it? Is this the end of the road? Is this the end of my dance? And he, the positive soul that he is, said, no, this is just a hiatus during the treatment, and you'll get back to doing what you do best. I realized then that I, who thought I had complete control of my life, had control of only 3 things: my thought, my mind, the images that these thoughts created, and the action that derived from it. So here I was, wallowing in a vortex of emotions and depression and what have you, with the enormity of the situation, wanting to go to a place of healing, health, and happiness. I wanted to go from where I was to where I wanted to be, for which I needed something. I needed something that will pull me out of all this. So I dried my tears and I declared to the world at large. I said, cancer is only one page in my life, and I will not allow this page to impact the rest of my life. I also declared to the world at large that I would ride it out, and I would not allow cancer to ride me. But to go from where I was to where I wanted to be, I needed something. I needed an anchor, an image, a peg to peg this process on so that I could go from there. And I found that in my dance. My strength, my energy, my passion, my very life breath. But it wasn't easy. Believe me, it definitely wasn't easy. How do you keep cheer when you go from beautiful to bald in 3 days? How do you not despair when, with a body ravaged by chemotherapy, climbing a mere flight of stairs was sheer torture, that too to someone like me who could dance for 3 hours? How do you not get overwhelmed by the despair and the misery of it all? All I wanted to do was curl up and weep. But I kept telling myself fear and tears are options I did not have. So I would drag myself into my dance studio, body, mind, and spirit, every day into my dance studio, and learn everything I learned when I was 4, all over again. Reworked, relearned, regrouped. It was excruciatingly painful, but I did it. Difficult. I focused on my mudras, on the imagery of my dance, on the poetry and the metaphor and the philosophy of the dance itself. And slowly I moved out of that miserable state of mind. But I needed something else. I needed something to go that extra mile. And I found it in that metaphor, which I had learned from my mother when I was 4. The metaphor of Mahishasura Mardini, of Durga. Durga, the mother goddess, the fearless one, created by the pantheon of Hindu gods. Durga, resplendent, bedecked, beautiful, her 18 arms ready for warfare, as she rode astride her lion into the battlefield to destroy Mahisha. Durga, the epitome of creative feminine energy or Shakti. Durga, the fearless one. I made that image of Durga and her every attribute, her every nuance my very own. Powered by the symbology of a myth and the passion of my training, I brought laser-sharp focus into my dance. Laser-sharp focus to such an extent that I danced a few weeks after surgery. I danced through chemo and radiation cycles, much to the dismay of my oncologist. I danced between chemo and radiation cycles and badgered him to fit it to my performing dance schedule. What I had done is I had tuned out of cancer and tuned into my dance. Yes, cancer has just been one page in my life. My story is a story of overcoming setbacks, obstacles, and challenges that life throws at you. My story is the power of thought. My story is the power of choice, is the power of focus, is the power of bringing ourselves to the attention of something that so animates you, so moves you, that something even like cancer becomes insignificant. My story is the power of a metaphor, is the power of an image. Mine was that of Durga, Durga the fearless one. She was also called Simhanandini, the one who rode the lion. As I ride out, as I ride my own inner strength, my own inner resilience, armed as I am with what medication can provide and continued treatment, as I ride out into the battlefield of cancer, asking my rogue cells to behave, I want to be known as not a cancer survivor, but as a cancer conqueror. I present to you an excerpt of that work, Simhanandini.
सन्नद्धं विविधायुधैः परिवृतं प्रान्ते कुमारी गणैः ध्याये दीप्सितदायिनीं त्रिनयनं त्रिंहाधिरूढां सितां शङ्कारीषु धनुषि चारुदधतिं चित्रायुध महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते या देवी सर्वभूतेषु विष्णुमायेति संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः या देवी सर्वभूतेषु शक्तिरूपेण संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः या देवी सर्वभूतेषु शान्तिरूपेण संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Before she... Maybe that deserves a moment or two of silence or some response. Kokila?
It was an inspiring act actually. It shows off all kinds of the expressions.
Yeah. I saw that on your face.
Ma'am, it was really great seeing dancing and doing a picturization with dance. And it is part of our culture, and that's a very proud thing. Like you said, culture is also getting unaware and it is going on missing. But if we use our culture also, it will be a sense of community feeling. It will make us together and no one will not be fearful to speak out because our people, our culture. It was really nice initiative, ma'am. In that video, we were able to grab a lot of information from the video, and it was really inspiring seeing that dancer to again get from deconditioning to conditioning, mentally, physically. It was very challenging for that dancer also. Really great.
Ooh, yeah. Vidya?
I'd like to share. Mansa. So I think it felt very personal because I was able to kind of resonate with the steps and with the mood, with the rasa, as she spoke about the abhinaya and the rasa. I think I also internally I was doing some slight movements with her because kind of resonated so strongly about it was all about strength, be it the nature of the song, the rhythm, her dance, the picturization. And I believe that even personally for me, imagery is very strong. I use imagery for resilience, for growth, for every time I fall and rise. So I thought that was so powerful, and I really thoroughly resonated with it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I have a question. Eileen, you were saying that this is something that we should not be doing. Yeah. And while I was going through it, I was like trying to pick up the parts which we should not be doing as dance facilitators or therapists. And I could pick up the parts where it was a lot about performance in the whole thing. One, yeah.
Yes.
Also left with the question that if I look at Jungian's approach to it and his whole thing about the imaginal world, and that being as real as the lived experience, I was finding that, and since this image has arisen to her and not imposed by somebody else, I think it was powerful for her. So the only thing that I'm saying is, okay, how do I actually utilize, how do I actually take this forward to people in terms of dance movement where it's not a performance of the imaginal world? I don't know if I'm getting my question across.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful question. I'd like to add a third part to your question, if I may.
Please, please.
I'll tell you a quick story. One of my internships, 1970, ages ago, was in Bronx State Hospital with psychiatric, psychotic, schizophrenic patients. One of the interns with us in our group was a dancer who was very trained in ballet. And she did these beautiful movements which the patients could not do. They were intimidated. It was an us them. I can do it, you can't. Right away there was a separation. Too perfect if you're working with clients. That's the most important. You want to do something they can do. I'm a folk dancer. Folk dance is much more simple than high style dance. Stylized dance.
So, sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say it depends who you're working with and the setting and so forth. Not to think this is a recipe to do with everyone. That's what I'm showing you. I'm not showing you a recipe.
Right. But yeah, to use imaginal world is that's something that's encouraged.
But if different cultures, so I also worked, let's say, in nursing homes in Massachusetts with old people who were facing death. Most of these, they were mostly ladies at that point, had come from England or Ireland. The music that I used was Irish fiddle music. The prayers that they said were the prayers they learned as children. When they were children and their mothers taught them not to be afraid of the night and of dying. And it was about Jesus Christ, figures they identified with it. That's the cultural specificity part.
Right.
That's the not imposing part. Yeah. Know your culture, know your setting. Don't be perfect. Don't be too beautiful. Yeah.
Yes, right. Thank you.
Sure.
And sorry. And I think with the classical dance therapy, format, the whole idea that religion should not be tied with dance therapy was something that we had trained with. That don't bring in any religion into a dance therapy session. But now I think slowly spiritual traditions are making their way in. People are much more open about it. People, in fact, want to explore spiritual traditions, perhaps tied to religions in some way. And so that's an interesting development, I think, in the field of dance therapy, and would love to know more about what you think, Eileen.
I would love that's a perfect segue. Is it Tripura? About 2 days ago, I'm now becoming part of something, and again, please write me and I'll send you the link. It's called, well, two things that I'll send you. One is called the Interfaith. It's a sacred dance guild. Started out as Christian. They've reached out to other religions. More and more people want to do this. I agree with you, the early days of psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, religion was a science and not a religion, and it had to be separate, etc., etc. People are so hungry for it now in so many ways. On the other hand, You have to be careful not to impose your religion on somebody else, not to use your mythology on someone else, etc., etc. So, given that, I think there's more and more of a need for it. And the other series that I was part of was from, it's part of the United Nations, is something called UNESCO, and they have the CID, Creative Something in Dance, and they've just had a series on sacred dance, which is very new for them. It's very wonderful, people from different traditions, but the demand around the world is growing if this is coming out of the United Nations too. So, from my bias, I would say that the bias against religion or spirituality is more of a Western bias. And if we want to be relevant to other cultures, we, therapists, need to be open to what has meaning for them. And it is growing. So I would like to invite you, anybody who wants, just join with me, the Sacred Dance Guild, or this invitation to the series. Someone else is coming up. The next speaker is African American in the United States. I was on a panel not with her, but with another African woman who was homeless and a drug addict. She danced her way out of that, and then she formed a dance company, which is called Rise Up. And it's very spiritual because addiction has a lot to do with spirituality. So again, it's new. You're right, there have been taboos. I think it's changing. I hope it's changing.
I'd like to add something, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
I think this is, we're definitely, I feel, there's a phenomenon happening, and I think this whole thing that Drupra is talking about, and Eileen, what you're saying about opening up to different traditions and spiritual and cultural traditions and all is so important. And playing sort of devil's advocate or whatever, I find that we have to be very careful, as you mentioned, also of not assuming that something resonates with people of a particular background or culture. One thing I find is that there are all these different traditions in spiritual, cultural, dance, all these physical traditions coming out of, for example, India, and there's so much diversity within the country. And everything doesn't resonate with everybody on an individual level, but also as a collective. And I think maybe because I live between two worlds at times, I find that this is something that's constantly coming up, where there are assumptions even from my colleagues and peers in the West, and how there's this whole need to also be open and educate each other on how there are nuances and layers to everything. And it's very important because otherwise what happens is we sort of bucket, people, we kind of compartmentalize or put people into buckets that, oh, you're Indian, so, this is just how it's going to, this is what works for you or whatever. And so, I just wanted to bring that point up because I think as we're going on this journey, it's really important to remember this point as well, is that it's such a personal experience.
To build on that, Ritu, when I was in Jordan working with the Syrian women refugees, these women are very religious. And you know what? They didn't want any music in the room. For them, music only goes with certain very religious functions. And they thought it's offensive to play music in another way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a perfect example.
Ma'am?
Yes, please, Mama.
Ma'am, like the video you showed, it was a performance of a professional dancer. But you said we have to do a simple movement. We have to simplify to do any therapy session with the clients or people, normal people who are non-dancers as well. So can we just use simple movements of that dance form and try putting, for example, for fingers or something, I can use opening of a flower or closing. for the exercise, physical trauma kind of thing, physical strain and all, or for the movements to improve the range of motion or something, I can do the only one aspect of the step, one part of the step. Can I take that simple movements and can I implement it? Is it
That's
possible?
that's perfect. And to take your example, Rama, the opening and closing, Ermgard would call that or I would call that a movement archetype. Because
Okay.
everything in life opens and closes. Flowers in the morning close up at night. We open to loved ones, we close up out of fear. So people, if it's abstract, people can write their own stories from it. It gives a simple structure that has enough space that people can interpret it and embed their own meanings in it.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, because even I am a classical dancer, so I know there are three aspects: nritta, natyam, like dramatic element is there. One is pure, like dance movements are only there, movements of the hands, and one is abhinaya. So instead of using those music, can we just tell them to enact like normal things? I'm picking up a phone, not working, phone is not working, I'm opening a door, basic lifestyle moments. Can I incorporate that moments and try making them communicate with each other? Like knocking the door, calling
Yes,
someone.
yes. When I worked with teenage boys in New York City, and we would do, you could call it rowing a boat, but when you ask what's the metaphor, it's making pizza. So we all made pizza together. And then the story, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to eat the pizza, so let's all eat the pizza. Oh, my tummy hurts. Oh, and then the story, like we did with the poem, keeps developing together. But it's their references. The
Yes, ma'am.
meanings
In
are
context to their lifestyle moments, their lifestyle, their cultures,
exactly,
everything.
exactly. So, but and the nonverbal, if you would say to one of them or children, tell me your story. I'm fine. Go away. But as the story unfolds, we make the pizza. Oh, I have nothing to eat. I haven't eaten in 3 days. Oh, and then you begin to hear the story.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Please also feel free to experiment. Just be open to feedback. There's another cultural sensitivity thing now in our country. Let me be really awful about this. We came to the country, we were welcomed by the Native Americans, and then we slaughtered them. And then we took their culture and we do all kinds of cute things with their culture. They call that appropriation. We pass feathers around. I do the same without permission, without context, without tradition. That's stealing, actually. So it's important to ask permission to check with the group. Is it okay if I use a drum in my group? Just so long as you're sensitive to the group and you ask them, you can't really go wrong.
Yes, ma'am. This won't hurt their feelings also. Like their religious beliefs won't get disturbed. If we ask them, we discuss with them and try to incorporate all sort of things.
Exactly, exactly. Which is why I might say that this is not a performance, this is therapy. It's really about a dialogue, it's about respect, it's about empowering the other person. It is not about your personal performance. On the other hand, her performance was so authentic that it empowers the audience. That's the difference. She's not just showing how beautiful she is. Do you feel like trying one more breakout group with a different theme? You up for it? I think so. We only have room. I thought we'd do all four, but obviously not. Let's try, what's a good one to choose? Just a second. Mm. Well, how about we make it a surprise? Choose one of the three you didn't do as a group, because collaboration is part of it. Make a decision among yourselves. If you worked with time, either work with space, or up and down, or existential. Decide which one attracts you as a group, and just explore it together. Think you can do that? Choose the theme, work with it, document it. All right, Preeta? Shall we just go from there? Where'd
Yes,
you go?
I'm here.
Ah, there you are. You're in the corner. All right.
So I send them back to the same breakout rooms, right? The same
Yes.
group? Yes, okay.
So part of the group process is quickly decide a theme. This is all about leadership and following and collaboration, and pick your theme, go to work, create, and document. And we'll have 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, so we look at coming back at about 12 India time.
Half past. Oh, no, it's your 12. It's sorry, it's my half past.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Yep.
Okay, opening the rooms.
Ready?
If you could just, raise your hand, or even use the raise hand option, it'll be great. Yeah, thank you.
It'll be good if other people who are not doing this, switch off their camera so that the highlight is, okay, it's already there.
I'm going to ring this, and however you want to start, go. Beautiful. Thank you.
We have taken time. So the beats and the slow and fast beats and how it affects our body. So each one's we did separate our own drawing in whatever way each one has represented.
I think that came across very clearly. I understood right away what your theme. Beautiful. Is it all right if we move to group number 2? Preeti? I guess
Yes.
raise your hands or...
Yeah, group 2, if you could raise hands. The others, please lower.
Shall I start playing?
If I can be heard, then I'll talk. Otherwise, I'll do it later. So this was about space, and it was about how can we actually interact with the screen and play with different body parts. Yeah, and the movement of coming in and out, how that creates a certain focus and how that creates a certain kind of a holding and legitimacy to the different parts. And apart from the aesthetic beauty, is just that sense of grounding which this brings in. And it was when we were discussing, it was a lot about space in terms of the mental space, the emotional space, the intra space, and what's in between the spaces. I think antardeham was the term that was used, the antardeham experience that is there. And it was about the breath, the bones and the cells, and how they respond in the space. How do I navigate spaces and spaces in relation to relationships? How much how much of it is coming forward and going backward? What kind of movements do we have in relationships, with the world and with ourselves? It was also about, the squares that we are in right now, and how can we actually interact in these spaces while still being apart. And something about visibility, and what does visibility mean to us also. And this is something we just came up while we were doing this thing. And about resilience, and how resilience actually comes back, with this of coming back and going forward, how resilience plays a role in that. And staying rooted with the parts, staying rooted with something for a longer period of time, and acknowledgement of the part apart from its aesthetic is something I think we all experienced. And the in and out of the space actually worked in the sense is stepping out of the context, stepping out of the problem, and taking a look at it again, or entering that space again. Yeah, so that's, if anyone else would like to add, if I've missed something. Yeah, thank you.
Group number 4.
Eileen, I think it would be group number 3. So it's all.
Since she spotlighted us, should we go ahead and let group number 3 go after? Yes. Yeah. should we share, each one of us?
Yeah, who would like to go first?
I'll go first. So mine was, I explored the existential theme of kind of diving down. And the words that really came to me was that the ground really supports you. So every morning I do Surya Namaskars, and when I go down, very gracefully you naturally come up. So really that there's support on the ground.
So for me, we explored the existential theme as well. For me, it was a lot of spirals and a flow, which was rooted deep down. So like I went from up to going down, being rooted. And even with the perpendiculars, I felt that and just wanted that to be everywhere, which is just going round and round and never ending.
I'll go next. So we took existential and space as a theme to be combined. And when I started with the flow of the music, I felt like, you know, a seed that pops out of the ground and slow and steady, it grows, it grows, even with, you know, the waves, I mean, the air that when the blows, it shakes and then it grows again, it grows into a big tree. And when it grows into a big tree, I came into the space wherein I could, you know, stretch my hands out and like really, really stretch it far so I could help people in. And when I again came back again, I came close to myself. I knew I was with me, and then again I could stretch out. So I was in and out, and it was really nice.
Okay, I'll go next. So the movements that I did were somewhat bringing me some kind of the feeling of vibration, and also breaking boundaries. I felt I was a phoenix going down and coming up. It was like rising from the ashes. And one constant image that was coming to me was of a feather. So kind of summed up resiliency for me. And while we were reflecting as a group, while we were in the activity, I heard, is it okay, Shani, if I share some of the points? Okay, so what Shani was reflecting, I'm sure she'll be reflecting here as well. I resonated so much with her that this thought also came to me that it is sometimes very difficult for us to get out of that darkness, that death, because we somehow find some comfort in it. So that times I think it is our own push to ourselves to come out of it, and that is also like these thoughts were something that are coming to me time and again. Thank you.
Since so I can share. Okay, sorry. Shelly,
No. Go ahead.
So I can share. For me also, it's slightly similar to what Somoshri and Shalini were talking about. Being comfortable and staying in that sinking, just being there for some time and spending time there. And eventually finding my roots, finding strength, challenging norms, and offering, receiving, and then just staying with that. So that is what it was for me.
Okay, should I go? So in context, when we decided to explore both existential and space, and both got joined immediately with me, and later on we discovered for many of us existential space. Going down was easier, closing eyes was easier than coming up. I couldn't find words then, but my gratitude to this group, to our group, which we spontaneously decided for a moment of silence rather than talking. And that is a very significant space for me today that I realized. This space that we can provide by not exactly defining the space by any markers, yet we gave that space. So this is like a beautiful realization for me now, and almost it's therapeutic. I could find words in that space that you provided for all of us provided for each other. It was so I would like to just share the first reflection that I shared with the group too, and the words following Shomosri and Jyotsna and how they put me into context was exploring the bardo, exploring my bardo, comfort in closure, labor of rebirth, and labor of resilience. That was very strongly felt. And in all of this, there was this sense of space that was part of the exploration, that was guiding the exploration, guiding the existence, and guiding probably the way to forward this square space and our individual space. It's a beautiful labor. Thank you. Jayesh, it's your turn.
For me, it was itne paas par itne dur. So close and yet so far. That is the theme which came up for me as I moved my body from a space perspective. And I like after Shawnee's sharing, we were all very comfortable as a group to be together in silence. So how as a group we were all okay to be in silence is something which I cherished. Thank you.
Sneha is also part of our group. Sneha, do you want to share something?
Yeah, I think one thing that also echoed for me based on everyone else's sharing was that I really felt this sense of staying within my comfort zone and not feeling the need to push beyond. And I think the moments that came out for me through this experience was that I was feeling very stuck and feeling very slow. So I was just trying to be comfortable within those restricted movements. And that was quite interesting to explore.
Is it Aishwarya? Have you shared?
Yes, I did share.
Oh, good. Okay. Anyone else? We are over time. I want to respect your time. Might I have till, well, for me it's 15 after. That's 7 more minutes. Yes. Preeti, are you somewhere? Let me find you. There you are. Is it all right if I take 7 more minutes?
Sure. Is it okay with everyone?
Yes, absolutely.
And before I go, let's remind that there's keynotes tomorrow. This is only the beginning. Maybe you can send the chat out so we can stay in contact and all that. Okay. What I want to share with you is only 3 minutes. Yes.
Group 3 hasn't done as yet.
Okay, I got 3 mixed up with 4. Shall we? Who's in 3?
I think we'll be quick.
Shubha, your video needs to be on. I think, yeah, okay.
Mohita, are you tracking time? Should we start? Oh, I think we still have one person who has to come.
Here she is.
Yeah.
Let's go. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to share Preeti, can I share a small document?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so the theme that we had taken was time, and there were some words that all of us had gathered, and I'm just sharing those words. And one second. Yeah, there are so I'm just going to read them out. The feelings that we all felt and the words that came to us through our movement. And so we expressed rhythm within, the tuning in, and knowing that change is a constant, flowing the inner rhythm of the breath as it goes in and out, and the rest fading away in the background. The arrival of the self, which is very comforting, was felt. And these are different, we all have written down together the different feelings that we felt and the words that came to us in one document. So I'm just reading it out as if it's one continuous document. So the arrival of the self, which is comforting. And then moving on to how perspective matters, the exploration, the function, the tuning, and the reflecting. Exploring the enjoying of speeds, different speeds of time. Walking fast, walking slow, downing again walking fast, staying still, and enjoying all speeds of time. There were some more explorations of not wanting to move, but needing to move. And that repetition is usually comforting. And for now, just wanting to stay in this semi-crouched position away from the screen. And there were two reflections, two explorations of staying away from the screen. And then traveling in space with time came, finding a resonating beat, feeling like myself, could tune in and tune out of myself through the movement. And finally, wanting to stretch so that I can feel my breath. And as time stretches, wanting to stretch the body out and back, away from a screen. That's the second one. Out just to stand and stare for idle exploration, or to observe small things that I miss out when time rushes by in a day for me. So there were different explorations. Thank you so much to my friends who held my space in the group. And thank you to all of you for hearing us out.
Ma'am, I also brought one small diagram.
Yeah, Rama, why don't you share? Oh,
Enjoy the time. That's it. This one I wrote.
yeah. Thank you, Rama. Thank you, Preeti. Anyone else wants to share something here?
May I screen share now, Preeti?
Yes, Eileen, you can go ahead.
This is a 3-minute video, and then it'll also give us a clue on how we may end together. So I think I shared with you that during when COVID was so intense in India, and I was working at that point remotely and learning about Zoom. I have a training institute in China, a 2-year training, and we've had to be on Zoom in 2 years, all the same issues you discussed. They were so touched by that. I want to share with you what they made, and then we'll use that to end. You can see? Can you see?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. We can see.
These are from my students in China.
Hello everyone, we are a group of therapists from China. We are sending you greetings. To those who are fighting in India and who are fighting in the coronavirus. 大家好，我们是来自中国的治疗师，我们向印度在疫情当中的朋友们送去祝福。我们是秦芳老师、Jack 老师、山地老师、Summer 老师、花然老师，我是 Grace。We'll be singing you a song of blessings。我们会给大家唱一首歌，祝福你们。 and we're sending these blessings to you. Blessings to you all. From China to all of you in India. Blessings to you.
I may, just on gallery view again, that's the power of a simple gesture. So just to invite us to end together, from my heart to you. Around the world, wherever you are, connecting, building connections, continuing the work. See you again, hope to see you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful session.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. I think
Thank
that
you
was
all. Bye.
a wonderful session. I just request you all, we have a feedback form. It'll be great if you could fill it up. Just pasting it here, but we will also send it via email. So please fill that in. It helps us bring more wonderful, presenters like Eileen. And thank you so much, Eileen. I can see the faces, and I think that tells it all. The smiles. Thank you so much for this wonderful session, and we really look forward to your keynote address tomorrow morning. Please join, all of you, please join us. It starts at 8:15, and Eileen is our keynote, one of our keynote speakers. And then we continue to our sessions. So see you all tomorrow. 2 more days of experiencing fun and, of course, a lot of learning.
Thank you.
Preeti, thank you.
Thank you.